Here it's time to make new friends. Aquavite Uskaba, fill your Glencairn. Share a dram with the spirit of Edmonton.
Slancha! Welcome to you, the viewer, and welcome to these two fine gentlemen right beside me. I can't point on this thing anyway, so these two guys right here. It's the after drink. It means it's time to unwind. So put your feet up, grab a dram or two or three. I don't want to pick it up, but I will. And relax. Relax. Dave's got some Japanese there too. As a quick recap to our evening, author Lou Bryson of this book right here. There it is. Whiskey Masterclass, the ultimate guide to understanding Scotch, Bourbon, Rye, and more.
It's in the basement.
Reviewing his. Did I miss something? Dave,
I forgot to bring my book out.
It's all right. It's good.
No worries.
You're a little bit out of practice, just a little bit. It might be my fault. I'm sorry, Dave. It's all me. It's all on me.
I'm reading it on the plane tomorrow.
Oh, good.
Oh, where are you going?
Going to Vegas tomorrow.
Oh, dude, way to go.
Yeah, you'll be reading on that one. Okay. Yeah, that's a waste of time.
He'll be reading on the way down.
Author Lou and I have done a deep dive into the first 8 chapters, but we've been bouncing everywhere. This is not linear whatsoever. We're all over the place. Over the first 8 chapters, the newest book, I just showed it to you. It was informative. It was fun. I think it was fun. I had a great time. Lou, you having a good time?
Hell yeah.
Excellent. That's the way I want it to be. So let's do a quick introduction and just tell us what's in your glasses like we did before. Lou? No, Dave. Let's start with you.
Me?
Yes.
All right. It's Yukon Dave coming from my deck. First time ever.
No basement this time.
Too lazy to get into the basement. I had this given. Given to me yesterday.
Oh, nice.
Nika from the barrel. And I just got this given to me today. I haven't cracked it open yet.
I like Edgeador. Good stuff.
A classic.
Yeah.
It's got a great color to it.
You need a better glass, though. Or just drink it. Forget it.
Well, how about this?
Yes.
Ooh.
There you go.
Look at that glass.
I like the crystal.
Look at that glass. Very nice.
Looking crystal.
I got all
Good
kinds
stuff.
of glasses.
It's the problem,
over
isn't it?
to
You just kind of accumulate them.
Especially you. And if you,
what I have in my glass, I'm sorry, I'm Lou Bryson, whiskey writer for about 20 years. I was the managing editor of Whiskey Advocate for 20 years. I am the author of Whiskey Masterclass and Tasting Whiskey. I'm drinking. As my ID says, I've already been drinking. I was at a wedding reception this afternoon, and we were drinking Angel's Envy. So nice. I was getting into that. But right tonight, I am drinking a new release from Westward. This is, they have a new whiskey club, and they're singing out some single barrel selections. This is a Tempranillo cask finish, and it's tasting really good. Nice. You know, so they sent me a Glencairn with it. We can get into the whole they send me whiskey thing later if you want to, because it's kind of an interesting conversation. But I'm also drinking Dead's Hat, which is an excellent rye whiskey that is about 18 minutes from me by the road. I am drinking the 2021 Bottled and Bond selection. I helped select this, and we can talk about that too, because that was a fun thing. And I'm drinking that in my tasting whiskey Glencairn, because apparently everybody gets a specialty Glencairn these days, and I don't want to be left out. So excellent. I got those 2 whiskeys. Ooh, baby. And we're rocking.
Nice. Thank you, kind sir. And I'm Dolph. I'm the president of the Alberta Scotch Society. I do the International Whiskey Journey, the Canadian Whiskey Journey, and the Whiskey Book Club. I'm your host. And I still have a bit of this, so a little bit less, and enjoying that immensely. So Alberta Premium, and that's POS Plus yeast going in there, and Leopold Brothers, the 3-chamber ride. I've got that. Oof. Dave's had that as well, and enjoying that thoroughly. I love my ryes. And thanks to you, kind sir, your suggestion, I did the Dad's Hat. This one's in port wine barrels because we wanted to see the difference, where I wanted to see if I can detect what rye would taste like if it didn't use POS plus yeast. So POS negative yeast is what goes into Dad's Hat. And I don't know if I'll have an answer along the way, but I'll be going back and forth just trying to taste it. I've got to tell you, it does not have the spicy notes like we're used to with the whiskey, like you said. But I'm still going to try to get those. Go ahead, bud.
Quick question for Lou. POS.
POF. F. Sorry, F is in Frank.
Okay.
Yep. It stands for phenolic off flavor.
Okay, because I kind of tuned in a little bit late because Lucky Dave came and says, no, it's 7 o'clock Eastern time, not 7 o'clock Western time. Okay, cool. Because I really like that German wheat beer comment that you made. Because that's a definite.
Well,
there's a definite difference.
The thing that sealed it for me was a trip to Maker's Mark a few years ago, and I got to taste the beer, the sweet wort before they distilled it. Tasted just like hef. I mean, I'm drinking out of it, and then the guy's like, "Don't drink too much, you'll shit yourself." Literal quote. I mean, yeasty beer is gonna happen. And I'm like, I'm sorry, it tastes so good, I'll take that risk. And I just, wow. I mean, I still remember the smell of it. It was that like fresh banana and clove and
clovey,
yeah. I mean, it just tasted like really good flat Hefeweizen. So
that's really fun.
That did it for me.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's them. It's good.
Hello, makers.
What I think is unique though is people who make beer. So Dave, you've made beer, I've made beer, and you've been in distilleries where they're making it. We don't have a problem tasting the new make, and not just a sip, like taking a sizable amount of the new make, tasting the grain, taking the protein off the top and tasting the protein. These are things that we don't have a problem doing, that I think most people, when they see it originally, would go,
ew.
Like, yeah, what are you doing?
These are the same people that think breweries stink. It's, that's like, no, they don't. They smell awesome.
Fantastic. When I'm brewing in my garage and my wife comes in, the dogs, you can see the dogs even smell. And Laura likes it. It's just a fantastic smell. It is. And it's almost on the same level as baking bread for me, for a smell that I like. So, Dave, did you have any other questions? Because I'm going to get right into the craft distillery and the craft brewery.
Here we go.
Question.
No, I that just the POF thing kind of, because I didn't understand that term. But when you started talking about German wheat beer, then I think, okay, I can understand different yeast because we brought in a yeast just to do our Weiss beer.
Yeah.
Just recently. So yeah, I've got some in the fridge.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Saranac, Utica Club. Yeah, okay. So
Utica Club, sure.
Yeah, so the thing was when FX Matt II, who, I'm not going to get teary. I miss the guy. I really do. He died like about, I don't know, 7-8 years ago. He was the first brewer I ever interviewed, back, oh my God, I want to say 94, 95. Okay. Great guy. It was a long interview. It was like a 2-hour interview. At one point, he almost lunged across the desk to strangle me. Things went better after that. It got better.
He asserted his dominance and everything.
Oh my God. He was like pissed at me about the questions I was asking. I'm like, dude, I'm just writing a story. That's all. So we got that straightened out. And I mean, I remained friends with him the rest of his life, talked to him frequently, and was genuinely stressed when he died. But he would not allow that Hefeweizen yeast into the brewery because he said it was a contaminant. It would ruin all his other beers. And I can't help but notice that the first beer they made after he died was a Hefeweizen. Yes.
They've been waiting so many years. It's our chance.
Oh my God. That beer came out and I laughed my ass off. It was just like, I love the dude, but I love them too, and this is just too funny not to laugh at.
But that beer
Inside
goes,
jokes are good. It's good.
yeah, that beer goes back so far in history that it was a bland, mass-produced FX was just, so yeah.
Oh, the Utica Club, absolutely.
Yeah, Utica Club was.
Yeah, well, it is my least favorite mass-produced beer, easily.
Really?
Nothing like Narragansett or something like that.
Actually, the new Narragansett lager, the stuff that's out now, I actually drink that fairly often.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, talking about yeast, there's other people that won't let the lambic yeast come in either. Same thing. You get infected with it, and it just doesn't go away. Everything's sour, or you're just doing something wrong and you just blame it on the sourness. It's like,
yeah,
no,
I mean, I know there's a brewery down in southern New Jersey, Cape May. They brew their sours in a whole other building. They don't take any risks at all. Yeah,
we have some doing the same thing here. All right. Here we go. The quotes down at the bottom. Dave, you'll be happy to know I keep going with my quotes. So he always made fun of me there, Lou. That's okay. So craft whiskey is seeking to do something different. They do it for the challenge. They do it for fun. But you have a problem with craft whiskey, the term itself. And the term is, I don't like the term craft whiskey any more than I like the term craft distiller. Since writing this book, have you come up with a term that you like better than craft distiller? And I suggested a wee distillery. So I don't know if that's better. And
which I did find amusing. I'll admit that.
Have you found a better term? And what's your opposition to the term? Let's go both of those for me, sir.
Okay. The first question is easy. I have not. Okay. I have not come up with a better term. I don't know a better term. Wow. Okay. I just figured out how to go full screen. This is much better. Sorry, you were like the size of a stamp before. This is good.
Okay. This
is good.
Well, I don't know if looking at us is any better, but
no, it's good. I can see the expressions on your face now. Before I was just going, did they like that, or did they think I'm an ass?
Are they smiling?
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, where the hell was I? No, I haven't come up with a better term. The reason I don't like it is because I see all the problems that craft beer is having with that term, and here it is. I always said I have never seen a definition of craft beer that I couldn't drive a beer truck through, because I mean, what is a craft beer and what isn't? Is Sierra Nevada still a craft beer? I mean, they're making over 1 million barrels a year, and a lot of people are like, yeah, they're not really craft beer, and I'm like, the beer is the same. Yeah. Is it about the beer, or is it about the company? Yeah. Craft distillers, is it about the spirit, or is it about the company? Is it about who owns it? Is it about how big it is? Is it about whether it's a corporation or is it privately owned? Is it what? The whole problem I had with craft beer is that the definition really came down to, we're not Budweiser. And I'm like, that's not a definition. That's just hate. I don't like, you don't like that beer. Fine. Just say that and say, I'm a brewer and I don't like Budweiser. That would be good for me. But the thing is, the industry, and particularly the people like me, the people that write about the industry, the people who measure the industry, the people who put metrics on the industry, they need a term. Okay. And they grab craft and they go with it. But the thing is, then like in craft beer, Blue Moon is the killer. Okay. Is Blue Moon craft? Okay.
Crap.
It doesn't taste like Budweiser.
No.
And yet in a blind tasting, it often does really well against smaller craft breweries. So is it about the beer or is it about the company? Because I can show you plenty of small companies that make shitty wit beers.
Yep.
That Blue Moon tastes a whole lot better than. And yet they're craft and Blue Moon isn't. So is it about the beer or is it about the company? And my main thing is I don't want to settle that argument. I want to walk away from it and come up with a term that is a term that doesn't cause those arguments.
So I like the term micro distillery, micro brewery. We're small. Just
Okay,
because I bought a still on Friday doesn't mean I'm a craft distiller on Monday.
but if you get bigger and your stuff is still as good, don't you want to still be a micro?
Well,
Then what?
oh yeah, okay, you got me on that one.
Let's carry
Damn
this
it.
even further, Dave. You're bought out by a large corporation. Then you're still making the same stuff. You're making
Yes,
it
they
the
leave
same
you
way. The
alone
large
and let you make
corporation
shit
gives
the
you
same
leeway.
way.
Well,
So
so you go back to was it Red Hook and Pyramid out of Seattle
Sure.
when they were taken over by Budweiser, and one of them took the Budweiser advice on streamlining and doing all kinds of things. The other one said, Budweiser just said, okay, you have the option to listen to us or do it what you want. And one beer turned into be kind of more pedestrian, and the other one was interesting. They're still a majority shareholder of Anheuser-Busch. One beer changed, one beer didn't. So how do you stick a label on that?
That's some of the problem. Let me put it into terms that we can talk about more plainly here. What about Lagavulin?
okay.
Oh shit, I like that stuff, but I'm so disappointed every time I buy one and give it to Diageo. Like I have a hard time giving my money to Diageo, but I like the whiskey.
That's my problem, because I got to tell you, at core, at heart, 100%, I'm a drinker.
Okay.
You know, I mean, I get the whole thing of, you know, when I go to a restaurant, should I be concerned about who they hire and who they don't, and where they buy their stuff, or should I be worried about what's on the plate? And the other thing is, okay, I'm worried about that with my whiskey, but do I give a shit about that with my gin? Do I even know? When I buy mixers, do I know? When I buy food, do I know? Or am I just worried about whiskey because I know about that? And it just gets, oh, Don Livermore, Jesus, he's asking questions. Like, you know what, dude? As far as I'm concerned, if you're making whiskey like lot number 40, you're a craft distiller, okay? Does that make you happy? Because it makes me happy.
Well, I think I really like what Don's putting out. On the specialty side, I'm not a big buyer of his what I call pipeline whiskey. I think Don's one of the most interesting guys I could sit and listen to him talk all the time.
Oh yeah.
But he talks to us as a group.
I'm kind of chuffed that he's watching the show.
Well, at this point, yes.
I'm still waiting for my autographed book, but I guess that's happening on Monday or something.
I'm just going to read it out loud. If you have a small cooker fermenter and still inside a large volume distillery, does that make it any more craft? And do we need the term craft? Let's throw that out there too. Do we need it?
We mentioned in the previous show that I had written a bunch of brewery guidebooks. I got to tell you, in my very first one, sorry, I had to laugh at that. In 1998, I put out the first edition of Pennsylvania Breweries, and one of the things I said in there was, why can't we just call them breweries? I mean, they're making beer. That's what a brewery is. A distillery, no matter how small or how big, is making whiskey. Why don't we just call them a distillery and let the whiskey do the talking?
Well, I love that. Lou, I think that's the best thing. I wish everything had no label on it. And you bought it based on, I like this or I don't like this.
Yeah.
But like we're on the romantic side where there's the whole production and sales side.
Okay, so there is a need to have the word, because if you're trying to sell your product, people are going to pay more money for a craft distillery bottle. And I think you can get away with a little more. Yeah, you bet.
Okay.
You do.
I'll say it. Should they? because I mean, I know like 5 years ago we used to call it the Evan Williams test. Because Evan Williams was $14, and Heaven Hill was not squeezing people and screwing everybody out of profits. Heaven Hill was, I mean, okay, maybe not 5 years ago, but 10 years ago, Heaven Hill was still damn near hand to mouth. Okay, and they were charging $14 for a bottle of Evan Williams, and I'm looking at that and thinking, would I rather have 4 bottles of Evan Williams or 1 bottle of your 2-year-old whiskey? And I got to tell you, the Evan Williams won almost every time because it was just better. It's harder now. It's harder now because I get things like, well, I mean, we mentioned in the earlier show, New Riff in Covington, Kentucky. Wow. Great whiskey and runs between $35 and $45 American. And it's really good. And I mean, they're going head to head with the big guys. They're making bourbon, they're making rye, making bottled and bond, and
which we like.
Yeah, we like that a lot. And I just have
we'll be back.
What's that? Oh, okay. I just don't know whether I want to.
Poor planning on my part. I'll be right back.
No, you be right back. We're going to keep talking. Because
I don't know if I want to. Do I want to pay more money? Yeah. See, that's yeah. I want to let the whiskey do the talking. And here's my thing. And I use this argument with craft brewers, but I developed the argument with craft distillers.
Okay.
You guys, you want to I want to pay money and make decisions based on how the whiskey tastes.
Mm-hmm.
You guys want to make decisions and pay money based on who's making the whiskey. Are they small? Are they independent? And so on and so on and so on. And the thing is, both of those are valid parameters. That's the killer, and that's what people refuse to accept, and that's what drives me crazy, because we're both right, and it's essentially a choice that we're both making, and it's a choice we make every day. I live in right now, for the next couple of months until I sell my house, I live in 2 very different places. Okay, and in the one place, I'm buying all mass-produced stuff because there's not a lot of other choices. There are a couple other choices, but they're a lot more expensive. Whereas when I finally make the move to this really like rural, local, farm-based community, I'm going to be buying local meat. I'm going to be buying local bread. I'm going to be buying local milk.
Some moonshine. I know.
Well, no, never. No, goodness me. Just because Pennsylvania seems to have a lot of moonshiners, and I know some of them. No, I won't be buying any of that.
Sorry, that's
she does make a pretty damn good peach brandy. Just saying. But I mean, when I have that choice, and it's an actual choice, and it's I mean, really, it's competitive. Yeah, I'm going to buy the local instead, even if it is 5 to 10% more. Absolutely, I'll buy the local more. I know the people. I can see them. I literally walk in and say, I don't shake their hands because I'm seeing them twice a week. What would you get is silly? But I mean, I know them and I buy from them. There's a butcher down there. They smoke their own hams and sausage. I buy it from them. Why wouldn't I? But I don't know. Am I, I don't know. I really fall on the let the whiskey do the talking thing.
Me too, but you still you buy the story, and whatever the story is, you either buy into their story, you like the story, whatever marketing does, or for me, it's more of a personal kind of touch. If you know the people, and I have a link to you that way, that really pushes it over the edge. Sorry, one last thing I'm going to say. Don's got a book coming out on Monday. He was talking about that on the 4th. So big shout out to you, Don. We'll hopefully get you on at one point. So congratulations. Actually, 2 books coming out. So the first one on October 4th.
Wow.
Yes. And so Canadian history and blending 101. It'll be really interesting delving into that. So kudos to you. But I'm getting back into the book.
Blending needs a lot more attention.
And
Yeah.
I didn't know that really until I started talking to Don a couple of years ago, because I didn't realize the scope of the, I'm going to call it a profession of what he does and what was being done as well in Scotland. And I'm not sure how much is being done in Canada with blenders, but every distillery is blending their own stuff. But let's talk about that later. What I should do is we're going to mention another thing you were saying, that you're taken aback by the lack of brewers' malts being used now. So there's so many micro distilleries, wee distilleries, whatever we want to call them, and many of them were breweries before that.
Yeah.
Why are they not using a whole bunch of different malts? So get your Vienna malts and your chocolate malts or whatever they are. Same thing.
I think a lot of the small distillers that were brewers originally, or had some, well, thank you, Eugene, that had some.
Not just that, this one as well.
I'm in on it. Wow, hey Val, how are you?
Oh, do you know Val?
Facebook wise, yeah.
Okay, good. Okay. Lovely lady.
Shit, what were we talking about? Oh, right, brewers.
We were
Sorry.
talking about malts.
The thing about people who were brewers and moved to distillers, I think, are more aware of it. But I gotta say, a lot of the distillers that are out there are just like, oh, pale malt. Okay, let's go. Boom, done. And that's, I mean, you look at, one of the first whiskeys I was aware of that used something other than pale malt was the Bushmill 1608 back in 2008. And they used crystal malt. And everybody was like, oh my God, they use crystal malt. Holy shit. You know, and all the brewers were like, yeah. What? Right? We've moved so past that shit. What do you want? But on the other hand, people like these guys, Westward, everyone who makes whiskey at Westward has to have worked at a craft brewery first, because they want them to understand what you can do with malt. I mean, there's literally over 100 different kinds of malt. I mean, more if you include the rye and the wheat malts. And it's, I mean, different malts is going to be a big level innovation. And I think, we talked about hey, Val, we talked about the different yeasts. That's another thing. We're going to see that. And the guy that I said inspired me to write Whiskey Masterclass, Bill Lumsden at Ardbeg, one of the things we talked about was, Christ, I can't remember what the whiskey they made now that was with the wild yeast. Alta.
I've got the three up here. The from Waterford is what you're talking about.
No,
right?
It was Glenmorangie.
Oh, sorry. And
Alta?
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean,
we added
using a wild yeast with that, and it you bring that through, and you get a different character. That's what I just actually did a lengthy interview with Mark Rainier about Waterford since you brought it up. Just 3 days ago, for an article I'm writing for. Yes. Sorry.
You know what? I should stop doing this, because you're like me. As soon as something comes up, I have to read it. And I lose my train of thought too.
I can't stop. I'm doing a piece for a website, a magazine, Massachusetts Beverage Business. They essentially write a magazine for the retailers in Massachusetts. They asked me to do a piece on whiskey terroir, and so I immediately got in touch with Mark at Waterford. And, I've tasted their different whiskeys from different farms, and same strain of barley, same yeast, same distillation technique, same type of barrel, clearly different, and strictly because of the farm it was grown on.
Well, let's do that.
Yeah, we are, right.
So right there, you're there with Sam.
Poor
and now
bastards,
Sam's
you're going to see a lot more of that next week.
And that'll be great because you guys have a great relationship. You feed off each other. You've obviously known each other for a while. And he edited both of your books as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and what you did that day, and this was blind, and your lovely wife helped you out. She poured the three, and I can't remember the three. I think there's 4 Waterfords 1.1.
Oh God,
like
more than that. Yeah, they have like
there
35 now. Yeah.
Oh my
But
God. Okay, well, there's
3 of
4
them
that's been available to me that I've bought.
I know. That's the same thing. I'm like, really? You had that many? Thanks, pal. But I don't want that many. Like we discussed, I have too many whiskeys already. Anyway,
so Lou, are you ready to take on that terroir in whiskey thing? Because that's a huge.
Most definitely, yeah. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, this article that I'm writing for Mass Beverage Business is like a pilot run. I want to get my feet wet, and then I want to dig into it further.
I got to ask a question. If the grain comes off of different plots of land and goes into different barrels, like the barrels have got to influence that in some way. So how can you say that because they're all different plots of land going into barrels, like the barrels have to have some influence? And we learned that a long time ago. We bought barrels
definitely.
So will the barrels change some of the flavor profile coming from different plots of land?
Well, you limit the influence of the barrels too, though, right? So you're picking the same types of barrels from the same places that have had the same liquids in it. But I see what you're saying, Dave.
We've done that.
There's got to be a divergence in there somewhere.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've tasted 15-year-old Glenfiddich that was literally filled within 15 minutes of each other into the same kind of barrel, sat beside each other in the same warehouse for 15 years, and they taste noticeably different. So no question there, but these are not single barrels. They're blends of barrels. So they're trying to blend that influence out right there. I mean, in the whole thing with the barrel is the iffiest proposition. Absolutely. You put your finger right on it. But given that limitation, I mean, there's distinct differences between the 3 different whiskeys. Now, is that all down to grain? Given the randomness of barrels, maybe not. On the other hand, they have done what they can to at least ameliorate that as a factor, if not eliminate it. So that's where I'm going. But I absolutely take your point.
I just want to cause some trouble. That's all.
Thank you, and thank you for that.
That's a nice way.
I would like to have a whiskey with this man.
Well, you are right now, but it's not quite the same. You have to get.
It's not quite the same. Cheers, Dave.
Well, you know what? We're not done with this subject because Dave, you have experience with this with 2 brewers. We have some expressions that we're using different malts. We have, and have you heard of many other distilleries in Canada? And the same question to you, Lou, for the States or in your states where you wrote the books, maybe that might help out, that are using different grains on a larger scale now? Because I know it's just started, and I don't know if it's something that's going to grow. Don said it might be the
Don said. Is he still listening?
I don't know. I think he comes in, makes it, and then takes off. The next level of innovation. But I'm
definitely checking in when he's on the show.
So I have a theory, and I've got no scientific background to do anything on this thing.
Okay, these sound like every single one of my theories.
But I think if you're a brewer, you understand that to get an end result in a beer, you have to use a different malt. Because we talk about this quite often. If all we had was pale malt to make beer, our beer would all be bland. We would never have anything different to offer people. So taking the beer theory, where if you want to have a dark beer, you better put some Munich, some chocolate, some black malt into it.
Roasted malt, all of it, yeah.
Like, why can't that kind of transition into distilling. And
Right.
one of the things when I look at mainstream distillers is if you start buying all these really different malts, it's way higher in price. And I don't know who it was on our show that go back a year maybe. They said the problem with distilling is most distilleries are run by accountants, and they're not going to spend the money on all this extra. Yeah, this malt
I
costs
thought
more.
that was
Well,
you.
we don't.
I think you've
That
said
wasn't
that
me.
many times. I've
Oh,
quoted
did
you
I?
saying that, I'm sure.
Oh.
I agree, but I do think it's the money. But there is an advantage, and you guys have done it. Two Brewers has done it. Lou, can you think of any really up there?
What's that?
Using the different malts for whiskey.
Oh yeah, I mean, I to be honest, and again, I'm talking from the perspective of someone who has a foot firmly in both brewing and distilling. As Dave said, I mean, I see one thing I saw is that the big distillers reacted to craft distilling a lot faster than big brewers did to craft brewing. And not in a, oh, well, let's squash those bastards kind of way. It was a, oh, well, okay, we can do that too. I mean, mostly, the one that pops to mind is Buffalo Trace, because they did a lot of innovation, a lot of experimentals.
Yep.
But, the thing is, the thing that we're seeing now in the last 4 or 5 years, Beam was doing a lot of experimentation that we didn't even know about. And now that shit's coming out, and they've been messing around with grain. I mean, just in the last month, the Basil Hayden Toasted came out with the brown rice in it.
Oh,
I
didn't hear
mean,
about it. That's cool.
I don't know of any craft distiller that was using brown rice. And the response to that I got from, I mentioned that, and some fan of craft distillers is like, oh, well, brown rice, big deal. Like, well, come
That's
on.
cool.
What the, yeah.
Cool, buddy.
I mean, just, it's real easy to just denigrate everything that a big distiller does.
Yeah.
But, I really look at this in the same way that I look at Ballantine. Do you remember Ballantine, the brewers? Ballantine Ale, Ballantine IPA. Ballantine had a lot of money, and they used it to mess around. They had a still on premises, and they used it to distill hop essence, because they wanted to find out what they could do with just the aroma of hops. They had beers that they literally aged for 9 years in wood just to see what the hell would come out. And I remember I talked to a guy who retired from Ballantine. I don't know, he was like 85, and I was lucky enough to get him on a phone, and he was just like, oh, I remember that. He says, that's the kind of thing you can do when you have a lot of money. And, there's innovation you can do when you're little, but there's also innovation you can do when you're big. Like Buffalo Trace bought, 50 acres of ground and is growing different kinds of corn because they're big and they can. Michter's is doing the same thing. They bought a farm, and they're growing a bunch of different kinds of rye.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
One of the problems here is we can't compete against Anheuser-Busch selling Budweiser and Bud Light as a small brewery.
Sure.
We can't compete against Crown Royal as a small distillery for the $29 bottle. Like, the economics just aren't there.
Sure.
So we have to have a better story, and we have to try.
You have to be more creative, and Al's creative. What you guys do is creative. You've got 28 expressions, for God's sakes, that's come out in 8 years.
That's the other thing you can do. You can be more innovative because you have smaller batches.
Yeah.
You can do a lot of different shit really quickly, whereas they can't. It doesn't make sense for them. Although, as Don said, what if you have a small distillery? Small in a big distillery. You can do small.
But I think that the big guys, and I use Don as an example.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Don, but
he'll forgive you, I'm sure.
Yeah, he's heard it.
But there's they're making pipeline whiskey for the guys. They're going to put it in their highball and mix it
The
with
well-drink,
whatever they want to mix it with. But he's also got the latitude to go ahead and make something that's interesting.
Yep.
And I got to tell you, cool stuff.
I think the interesting group is growing, and they want to be part of that.
Yeah,
I'm going to put this one in here from Steve Lee. So shout out to Grant Steve.
Oh, here we go.
He's a small distiller in a place Oliver, and this is them. I don't know if you've seen that. So just north of Washington State in BC in the Okanagan, and Douglas. This is his. Creativity can happen in both, and he is, and it gives you the latitude, and that's a great thing. And we'll say craft, I'll say wheat distillery, whatever. They get the chance to do it, and even these guys. We're talking about.
I mean, nobody else has done that, and it's likely that no one is going to real soon.
No, and you do need the money too, though, because you have to buy the still. But the other thing that he did do, and he was great about the bigger guys. He was saying like the bigger guys out there, they're doing a fantastic job, and he will not, he won't bash them. He try to pin them down a little bit. Could they do something different? It's like, no, they've got a role. They're doing it. They're being innovative. They're supportive within the industry as well. They're competitive. But he had nothing but great things to say about them online. And I pushed for a couple minutes. Couldn't do it. He was steadfast, and he was a class act, right? We like it.
He's a very even-handed guy.
So I will defend Anheuser-Busch to the, like I've done beer judging, and for that category of beer, they make a great bear.
For rice beer.
We can't do that. So do you want to compete with them and get squished, or do you want to go and do something different?
Yeah.
And we all want to do something different.
All right. I'm changing because I want to get onto another subject that I'm going to poke the bear a little bit with Lou, because he has a hard time with single malts, American single malts a bit. So you do. You said that we should get this to work. That's the thing. So there's some very interesting American whiskey regulations coming down the pipe as well. So I believe that several well-established distilleries are fighting for this, like Leopold Brothers, like Copperworks, these guys, like what are they out of Texas? Westland and Texas.
Both of them.
Falcones, same thing. All fighting for this.
Yep.
Can you, Lou, first tell us what your perception of single malt is right now? What it was, has it changed? And can you tell us what the distilleries want? And are they getting what they want out of this new change in classification, or this new addition to the classifications? All on your shoulders, Lou.
Yeah, well, hey, that's all right. No, actually, I went out on the road with them in 2019 to a couple of places. I was in Massachusetts. I was in New York. We did a thing in Manhattan where I was part of a panel with some malt distillers, American malt distillers, talking about this. So I'm pretty well keyed in on it. I think let me talk about what they want to do first. Okay. What they want to do is right now to be labeled as malt whiskey in America, and I think this is the main issue, you have to be like bourbon in a new charred oak barrel. And that's an issue because, I mean, Scotch is generally not in a new charred oak. It's in used cooperage. Which, if you're going to do a new charred oak barrel, it's going to have a huge influence on the spirit. Yep. And it can be argued an overwhelming influence on the spirit. So some distillers have taken the route of just, running with that. Stranahan's comes to mind. Yep. And saying, this is American malt, and this is what we're going to do. And some distillers have, essentially said, okay, we're not going to call ourselves American malt whiskey because that's bullshit. We want to use used cooperage. We're just whiskey. Yeah. And okay, so let me stop there and say that most consumers, and when I say most consumers, I mean well over 80%, don't understand what's on the label. Yeah. Because our regs are so complicated. Nobody knows what straight whiskey means. Straight whiskey just means that it's at least 2 years old. And most people think straight whiskey means, oh, it's not diluted. Okay, that's good. That's what I want. Which
no ice. That's what it means. There's no ice. It's straight.
Right.
50%, you bugger. Listen. 50%.
Yeah, we don't even understand this shit. Yeah. So I think we need to straighten that out and make it less complicated right away. A bit more obvious. But the thing with American single malt is that, okay, in Scotland, we have that term because there is a long, centuries-long tradition of blending whiskeys from more than one distillery. Okay, no such tradition exists in American whiskey. Okay, there are absolutely exceptions, but they are a tiny, tiny percentage of the vast pool of whiskey that's out there, to the point where like people will make an exception of them and say, hey, this here is blended from more than one distillery. Almost every malt whiskey that's being made in America today is from one distillery. So right. I would argue that the only reason we want to call it American single malt is to make it sound like Scotch.
Okay.
And I have an objection to that on several levels. One of them being, why do we want to sound like Scotch? Why don't we just want to be American malt whiskey? Yeah, exactly. We're good enough to be that on our own, and we're going to be different from Scotch anyway. Two, if everything is American single malt, just call it American malt. And if it's blended, then call it something different. But I think it is disingenuous to say that we want to call it American single malt to denote that it's only from one distillery, because they almost all are. I have an issue with that, and I think it's all about trying to sound like Scotch, and I don't think we should be. And I don't say that for the benefit of Scotch. I say that for the benefit of American whiskey. That's my problem.
Is it because when Dave, I'll come back to you too. When you're buying a whiskey, you don't know what it is. You've seen it for the first time. If you see it says single malt, do you think you can pay more for it as opposed to thinking it might be a blend? If it's American, Canadian, whatever it is, Canadian as well, I've done the same thing. Do you just think you can pay more when it says single malt? Because I think this is a money issue more than anything else. I just think they think they're going to get more money because of the cachet that Scotch brings to it. Lou.
Well, I think it's all these industries. We don't want the public to really know what's going on. So we need to keep it kind of a little bit gray so they really don't know what's happening. And for me, if I go into a place and it says single malt, well, then I look at what country does it come from and what is their terminology.
Okay. Yes. But you're coming from an educated viewpoint.
Well, and that goes back to my point is I think, I don't care what industry you're in, we don't want the public to know really what's going on. We just want to sell them something. When I say we, it's
Dave is everybody. Being dangerously honest here, and I love him for that. I'm serious. I think you're being completely honest, and I agree.
Well, and I always thought single malt meant it was a single malt made in one distill. Well, no, it's not a single malt. It's could be many different malts. Like I didn't know, and through study, through whiskey clubs, through all this kind of stuff, I've kind of learned
like
stuff.
This.
Well, sorry, that came later, but I have that book.
That's the book.
I'll show it next week. You wait.
he was very proud of the fact that he didn't buy it online and he got it immediately because people were
Thank
talking
you.
about. I
I
got
bought
mine
it
in 3
locally.
days. I got
Buy
it
local.
buy local, and I got it right away. So Dave was very proud of it. So he did. Here's a
By
good
the way,
comment from.
do you think the hat works? Does the hat work?
I do.
Is it good?
It's a little bit dark. It makes you a little bit
It does
foreboding.
make it a
as
bit
well.
dark there. I'll admit that, but
I should
Foreboding.
have the hat sitting
you
outside.
would look better in the hat. You would.
Well, once I heard you're only 62 and I'm 60, I'll be 65 real soon. I thought, man, I look like hell.
You need the hat. The hat would make you look better.
There you go. Let's just hide everything. So this is a good point. Same thing. It doesn't not simplify it. Does it simplify? You know what? Before you answer that, I'm going to say something else because here's an article: American Single Malt Whiskey to be legally defined. It's by Kate Malzewski. I'm sorry, I mispronounced it. So according to the definition put forth by the ASMWC, American single malts must be made from 100% malted barley. Easy enough. Distilled entirely at one distillery. Makes sense. Mash distilled matured in the U.S., just like it's following the Scotch kind of thing. But matured in oak cask. It doesn't say virgin oak in here, though. So this person is just saying oak cask of no more than 700 liters. So small
I
oak
don't
is what we
understand that.
consider
Why?
Canada.
Why does it have to be less than 700 liters? I'm not so sure I'm in on that.
If
Dawn's
Don's
an odd
on
thing.
Dawn talk about this because he's introduced the notion with us in Canada has to be less than 700 liters as well to denote small oak. I think our
small wood. Yeah.
Small wood, small oak, whatever it is. So it says that distilled to no more than 80% ABV, bottled at 40 ABV or more. So
I'm okay with those.
So that seems fairly simple as a definition. I could go for that. And here's some other comments on your hat. So one, two guys, one Dram want to know if it simplifies the market because I think it does, but I think it leads you to believe it is Scotch. I agree with you, Lou, in as much as they're taking it for that reason. And the same thing happened here in Canada. That's why people had the single malts and they talked about it. Defining properly, I thought we'll see what the definition actually comes up. And this
by the way, just
in November.
This comment that came up: virgin oak is a bourbon defining property. It is an American whiskey defining property. Rye has the same thing. Wheat has the same thing. Malt whiskey has the same thing. Currently,
all right,
has to be new charred oak. Corn whiskey is the only major American whiskey category that does not. In fact, it specifies that it cannot be new charred oak.
And I like that in your book too. And you mentioned one of them that was a blue. Oh, the
blue corn, the Balcones. Yeah.
I got to try that.
So, yeah.
Something like that. I got to try it.
That shit's very different. I like it.
All right. I think we've beaten this a little bit for a little while. But what we talked about micro distilleries and our hate for the language, and maybe there's something better because it just doesn't fit everything. It doesn't.
Yeah,
and you know what? This single malt, it doesn't fit everything. But if you're trying to define it, the too loose of a term though doesn't help out either. And therefore, these ones are for distilleries that are doing some fantastic jobs as well on what they're making. They're proud of what they're making. I think they want to promote it as much as possible. So good for them.
I would be completely okay with all malt whiskey.
Yeah, all malt.
Yeah,
100% malt.
Or even the hated Scotch term of pure malt. I'd be okay with that.
Well, that's a Japanese term, isn't it?
How about
no, that was a Scottish term that they got rid of. Cartoon got screwed for that.
As soon as I see that on a Japanese bottle, I start looking. Okay, where did the rest of this come from?
It's all from Scotland, buddy. All right, we're good. You know what?
What else we got?
We got a couple in here, but okay. This kind of I had some three heavy hitters.
He's got that kind of look in his face.
Because I'm gonna reset. Sorry.
Okay. All right.
We're good. Lou, you mentioned finally getting an answer to a question that's been bothering you for a while, and I had the same question as well. And since we had two distillers on here with us, I think it's a good one to ask. So, but my question leads into yours. If the faints, heads, and tails are continually reintroduced back into the low wines, at what point is the toxicity not distillable? So where do these elements go? In my mind, I can't picture it. After 5, 10, 100 runs, you still have the toxic elements that are not disappearing. They have to be thrown out. And you say that. You say that eventually there's stuff that you get rid of. And I don't know when that happens, but hopefully you or someone on the side can say this. But then you said that your question was exactly the same as this, in the same relation. When do you throw it out? But yours was with the beer stills.
Yeah.
So could you explain? I don't want to make this really complicated.
Overly technical? Sure.
Yeah. Well, you can. The people on here would like it. Let's go. You could talk about a beer still, because I didn't understand that term either until I read the book. So that's one thing I'm giving to you as well.
Sure.
Because I just thought column stills, and I went just column stills.
I see. That was another thing I learned from writing the book.
Perfect. So tell us about that. And where do the heads go? Because you can explain, especially the heads, they escape in the steam. So yeah, if you could tell.
So let's start with beer still. First off, a beer still is a Kentucky thing. So it's called a beer still. It's also called a stripper still. What it is one side of what a Scotch distiller would call a column still. Okay, so the column still in Scotch has two sides, which they call the analyzer and the rectifier. So let's just throw that out for now and completely forget about it. What you have in bourbon, in American column stills, is literally a column, one. And you got cold wash coming in at the top at anywhere between 8 and 12% alcohol. Okay. So that's coming down and going through a variety of plates with the holes in them, about 15 inches apart. And at the bottom, you have live steam coming up. And that's where the term stripper still comes from. Well, the term beer still comes from that cold wash, the beer coming in. Stripper still comes from the hot steam rising up through those holes in the plates, strips the alcohol out of the beer because it heats it up and carries it along with it then up the column. Yeah. So that's how it works. And when the stuff gets down to the bottom, by the way, it's only in that still for about 90 seconds.
Yeah, quick.
That's it for the whole top to bottom thing. And that's what that's one of the things that makes the difference with the 3-chamber still that Leopold Brothers has revived. It's in there for about an hour and 20 minutes. So it's getting cooked a lot longer time. It's also getting cooked when there's a lot higher water content, so you're bringing more of the water-soluble flavors out. That's the difference with the 3-chamber still. I really love the analogy that David Wondrich made with the 3-chamber still. He said, a pot still is like a flintlock musket. A column still is like a machine gun. A 3-chamber still is like a bolt-action rifle. I'm like, that's brilliant. I don't know if it's exact, but I love it. That's a picture I can grab onto, Yeah. So with the stripper still, where the bad shit goes, okay? The problem I had and not being able to figure this out was that I forgot that we're not pulling the shit off at the top. We're pulling it off before the top. So there's still more plates above where we're sucking off the alcohol and sending it to the doubler. Yep. So the stuff that's moving past that, the stuff that's even hotter and moving up and up and up, that's the bad stuff. And it's just going off and it's being disposed of. It's being...
is there like a release valve and it just shoots out?
It's got another pipe. I think they burn it. No, they don't just let it off into the atmosphere. They may have at one time, but they don't anymore. No, because, you can't do that shit. Back in the day, yeah, they probably did. They was like, who cares? But now they collect it and burn it because it's, at that point, it's all flammable. So they burn that off. Hell, I don't know. Maybe they burn it under the boilers. Maybe they burn it in the dry houses. I mean, it would make
maybe that's what they run their stuff with. Yep.
Right? It'd be foolish to just waste it. But that's where it's going. It's essentially going off in that section of the. I'm sorry, I'm holding my hands way above the camera here.
I can essentially
go. We understand.
It's essentially going off in that section between where the alcohol is coming off and the top of the still. So that's where all that shit's gone. And the slight remainder of it, you go to the doubler, and there's some stuff that stays in the water. And every now and then you change the water.
Okay.
And that's where it goes.
All right. So I'm still stuck with mine, though. At what point do they dump out? So your question was answered. I'm really happy for it.
Yeah.
But mine, I still don't understand, because again, the heads, tails, they're going back into the low wines and redistilled and redistilled.
Are you talking about pot stills or column stills?
Yeah. No, pot still. So let's
pot stills. Okay.
So
some of that depends on how you distill, because some guys, I mean, will literally take the tails, you know, everything after you stop the cut and you've got your hearts, you stop the cut. They will just take everything after that and dump it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because they're like, brr.
And I find that more with micro distilleries that they do that. They just dump it. They don't put it back in. But I find the big ones always talk about everything goes back in.
It's because some of it is because the big ones can afford to squeeze every last bit of alcohol out of it. And they don't want to lose it. Some of it is because there's some interesting shit in there. Okay.
Some flavor compounds you want back in. Yeah.
Are you familiar with rum at all?
No,
rum distillation?
not so
Okay.
No. Heard about it.
Okay. So there's and this is something I learned from a guy who's distilling rum in Pittsburgh at what's called Maggie's Farm Distilling. They have what they call the Queen's Share rum, and it contains a portion of tails. And he's like, the tails get a bad rap. He says there's actually some really interesting flavors in the tails. You just have to be careful with it.
Yeah.
Because as I understand it, the really dangerous shit comes out in the heads.
Yeah.
The stuff in the tails is just like funky nasty. Said, but a little bit of funky nasty is not bad. And that's the thing with whiskey. A little bit of funky nasty can work kind of interestingly with the oak.
Yeah.
Okay. Because he's just doing, I mean, his funky nasty stuff, his what they call the Queen's Share rum, and apparently that's like an old term. Okay. That stuff, they're like, I don't know, they're aging maybe 6 months. But when you do it with whiskey over a long time, some interesting stuff takes place. The heads, you run the heads through a couple times, and eventually you come out with something and you're just like, it's the end of the week. Throw it out.
Okay.
So that's, it's kind of like, we talk about the beer stills being continuous stills. Yeah, they don't really run them 24 hours a day and just keep pumping more shit in and pumping stuff out. They stop and they clean it. That was something I learned. I was like, oh, continuous still. Okay, it's always running. Yeah, it's not. Which, when you look at it, it makes sense.
When you keep putting the stuff in, yeah.
Yeah, because it's like grains and stuff in there. It's going to get caked on. You got to clean it. And they do. So.
Excellent. Gentlemen, we've come to the end of our hour. So let's go last comments. Dave, do you have any last comments? Then I'll go to you, Lou, and then I'll bring it all together.
No, it's getting kind of cool out here.
Okay, I'm done. I'm not talking to you anymore. The whiskey's not even making me warm. All right, forget you then. Lou, do you have any last comments?
I am enjoying the hell out of this rye whiskey. I don't know if you had any of the stuff with the port in it, but this is, and it's so not like other rye whiskeys. I mean, I was drinking the Michter's earlier tonight. This is not like that. And that is, that's some of your small distillery innovation right there. Dad's had his unit a completely different mash bill, and I think that shows. That's all I got.
Have to go back and keep visiting Dad's hat. You're moving away from them, but I'm sure they'll appreciate you coming back.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
Well, this was fun. It's all the time we have, whiskey friends. It's been a fantastic evening. Thanks to our listeners. Thanks to the panel. Dave, you're the one panel. So thanks, Dave. Thanks, Lou. It is an absolute pleasure spending this time with you guys. And I hope you had
time. Good conversation.
It's good. And next week, I got to get a picture of your friend again there.
I'm telling you.
He's coming on with us next week.
You guys need to be ready for Sam Kumlenik.
and he's a colorful guy. And
He is, and you know what? Honestly, save your rye whiskey questions because he is on it.
Nice. And you'll introduce him a little. Well, no, he'll introduce himself. He can tell us everything.
He's a big boy.
He's a big guy. And join us next week, Saturday, October 9th, for part 3 and 4 of the Whiskey Book Club's 12th book. This book right here, Alan, Whiskey Masterclass: The Ultimate Guide to Understanding Scotch, Bourbon, Rye, and more.
Buy copies for all your friends.
Buy it if you haven't done so. And again, last notes, if you haven't liked, subscribe, do it in the future. And hopefully we see you again. Fun night, and we're going to have a lot more fun next week. And thank you very much, gentlemen. So let's hold up a glass. We got something. Everyone's got a little bit left in some glass.
Mine's
Lou's
empty.
doing really well with his. No, don't finish it. You got to cheers.
Oh, that's the second one there, man. Come on.
Here's the good company. Here's the good whiskey. Here's the good books. Here's the good conversation. Here's to seeing you all next week. Thank you, gentlemen.
Cheers to that.
Cheers.
Thank